Hi everyone, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. It is early December, so I'm doing my November book wrap up. It's one of those days. Jensen woke up with a little cough and a little fever, and so we're like freaking out and we're gonna take him to urgent care. So I just whoop, did the bun, and then we called there's like a nurse hotline, and they're like, no, just, keep him home and give him fluids and turn on the humidifier and he should be okay. So, just kind of a stressful way to start out the day. And for all of you fellow teachers, you know that these last couple of weeks before we go on winter break are just a little stressful. We're a little tired, and I am 29 weeks pregnant. Let's do the bump shot here. Getting pretty big, getting pretty heavy. It's hard to move, hard to move around, hard to stand, hard to sleep, but I am very comfortable in my new sweatshirt. This is from a fellow booktuber's merch section, Ariel Bassett. You've probably watched her videos before. So this says, I'm thinking about books, and it has this cute little book, little embroidered illustration thing on it. So it's just super cute. I think they're available again. So you could go over to her channel and see if they are. She sold them for a while and then the sales were closed, and now I think they're back open. So anyway, I know the feeling of the supply chain issues. So I finally got some copies of my second book, Major Events in American History. And so I got these really pretty hardcover versions. So I'm going to be giving away 2 signed hardcover copies of my book at the end of this video. I also made little stickers. I just thought these were super cute, so I'll put some stickers in there with this, and I'm going to be choosing 2 winners. So stick around to the end of the video to find out how to win. And I will also link the book down below in case you don't want to wait for the whole giveaway and announcement and everything process. If you just want to get one, then they are available, I guess, now. All right, let's finally get to the November books. Whenever I finish a book during a particular month, I try to keep them all together. So I have a new place right up here where I've been keeping them for this month. Ugh. I have to stand up now and grab them. Ugh. Okay. I think I'm just gonna do it like that for right now. So I ended up reading 9 books, which is a bit more than I've been doing lately, but quite a few of them were pretty short. So this was the first one. It feels like a long time since I've read this, but I guess this was just at the beginning of November. It's called Ancestor Approved Intertribal Stories for Kids, and it's an edited work of short stories by a bunch of different Indigenous authors. And so that's one thing that I really like about this book, is that it might introduce you to some new Indigenous authors. For a while, it was kind of just all Sherman Alexie all the time, who, I still have a special place in my heart for him. I really liked his books and Smoke Signals and his podcast and everything, but it is dangerous to, always look to just one person to represent an entire super diverse community. And he's kind of been, I wouldn't say canceled, but I would just say people are looking for alternatives, which is good, as you should, new authors start coming up. So this book is really cool because even though they are separate short stories written by different authors, all of the characters in the short stories are headed to the same powwow in Michigan. So there's a common thread between all of them. Haven't really seen too much of that before. So it's really cool to see different people from all over the United States, from different tribes and just different situations with different reasons for going. Some are dancers, some are vendors, some are artists, and they're all headed to this same powwow. And then we see the powwow just from like different perspectives as well. So this is really good for like upper elementary, middle school. If you do like read alouds in maybe, you know, like a 4th or 5th grade classroom, this would be a really cool one for that. So I liked this one a lot. It's just that they talk about fry bread so often and Indian tacos, and that is something we ate a lot growing up because they were sold at like every community event and they're so good. And I was really craving them and I don't know how to get them down here. So I need to go back to Susanville at like fair time, children's fair time, that comes sooner, and get an Indian taco or some fry bread. Just sounds really good. The next one that I read is this gorgeous book, and I made like an entire separate video about this book so you can get a little more of an explanation of it there. That video is on my channel. But this is just a beautifully illustrated book of book recommendations. So it's a book about books that will make you want to read more of these books. And I think they also have like some other kind of merchandise coming out based on this, so like a little book journal and maybe like a calendar and stuff like that. So you can check out Jamise Harper and Jane Mount on Instagram for a little more information. This is Bibliophile Diverse Spines, and it's just gorgeous. And I think it would also make a really good Christmas gift or holiday gift for somebody you know who loves to read and loves like physical books on their bookshelf. Someone like me. The first recommendation that I read from that book is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Bibliophile. And I've had this book recommended to me by many, many people because it is a little bit similar to The Office of Historical Corrections, which is one of my favorite books. That's a book of short stories, all written by the same author, and so is this one. And it's from a pretty distinct perspective of like Black women who go to church and who are raised in like Black church. So that definitely influences the perspective and the plot and the characters in each of these short stories. A lot of them are about sex. They get like a little bit graphic. So I was saying, I think in the other video, I might be a little bit too much of an actual church lady myself to be like fully comfortable giving it a 5-star recommendation or whatever. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it, but just know that that is also a really like distinct theme in most of the stories, because you know, it is a part of life and it is something specifically in these communities that is used, you know, like as a tool of shame, and it's like such a hypocritical issue, and so it works really well like as you explore that in these short stories. So yeah, just some of it I was a little bit like, ooh. This is another one that was recommended in the Diverse Spines book. This is called Winter Counts by David Heska Wanbley Whedon. And it is a crime thriller type of book. The main character lives on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, and he's like, I was gonna say an enforcer, but not really. Like he works for himself, you know. So because laws on reservations are kind of complicated in that there's like tribal police and then there's federal police, and there are different jurisdictions and like different things that fall under the responsibility of just different groups with different resources and motivations to actually solve those crimes. So this is an interesting thing to look at. I think over this book I would recommend Louise Erdrich's The Roundhouse. That one I think explores this idea a little bit better, but this one has more of that like crime thriller feel. The author is a lawyer himself, and so I feel like there's kind of like a whole subgenre of like crime thrillers written by lawyers who know the law and like how to, you know, flip that into like a cool plot with plot twists and stuff like that. So this one is really good, and I would also just recommend Louise Erdrich every chance I get. One of the best books that I read this year is nearly 100 years old. This is Nella Larson's Passing. It is a short story. I would say that you can read it pretty quickly, but it is like very dense. Like it probably took me longer to read this than Secret Lives of Church Ladies, I think. This one took me longer. It's mostly like the internal dialogue of a character named Irene, and she is kind of like reunited with a friend from her past. It takes place in Harlem in the 1920s, and Renee and her husband are members of this really thriving Black community in Harlem. Her husband is a doctor. She puts on a lot of like events that, as she would say, like uplift the race. And so anyway, she comes back into contact with a friend from her childhood who I believe had like a white mother and a Black father, so she's light-skinned, and then her father died and she was taken in by the white side of her family, and ever since then she just passes as white. And so she marries this white guy who has no idea that she is actually also Black, and he's like really racist. And you know, the sacrifice is worth it to her because she has this like financial and social stability, but at the same time she misses the community that she grew up in. So she's kind of like walking this fine line where she goes and visits Irene pretty often and goes to like these parties, and she just wants to be around other Black people. And there's some interesting discussion about other white people that also attend these parties and just like the motivations behind that. Another like thing that I kind of thought was funny, this was published in 1938, I believe. Oh, 1929. Okay, 1929. Yeah, so even older. There's another one that I have to talk about in a minute that was published in 1938, but 1929, so really getting close to 100 years ago. And Claire mentioned something about like CPT, like that's why she's always late. And I was like, oh my gosh, that phrase is that old. So it's very, very interesting. So well written. I think I'll read this like multiple times after this. There's like some excellent examples of foreshadowing, and there's a version on Netflix right now, and it's done in black and white. And I thought it was done really well. It's pretty true to the book. So it's just really interesting to like read the book and then watch the Netflix film. So I highly, highly recommend this one. And I'm getting like really into Nella Larson, and I want to read more of her books. So I will keep you updated on others of hers that I read. So we went from a tiny little book to this massive hardback. This is Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. It always kind of bothers me when I see it in like photography or like on film, because like the colors are so blown out, and so I'm always like, am I doing something wrong as I'm holding it? But no, that's just the cover. This is just about 600 pages. Yeah, like 580 pages. This was this month's pick for Amory's book club. I still need to go back and watch the Instagram live between Jonathan Franzen and Amory. He is definitely a masterful writer. He has a lot of other books that I actually haven't read. This is the first one I've read of his. You can tell he just is a novelist. He is amazing at what he does. This story is definitely very interesting. The reason that it's so long, or part of the reason I guess, is because it kind of has like 5 main characters. So there is a father who is like an associate pastor at a church, his wife, his 3 children who are teenagers. 2 are in high school, 1 is in college, and they all like get their own perspective. Then there's another son who's a little bit younger, and he doesn't get his own room in this book, but you jump back and forth between the perspectives of those 5 people. The majority of the beginning is just all on one day. It's Christmas Eve, I think, and this is set in like a Chicago suburb in the 1970s, and each character is behaving pretty weirdly on this Christmas Eve, and you get to see kind of like flashbacks and like the context of why they're doing what they're doing. It has a lot to say about religion and kind of like that like Jesus culture of the 1970s, and sort of like the psychological tools that people were also using in like youth groups and stuff in the 1970s. Has a lot to say about mental health and mental illness, as well as kind of like white saviorism and like white progressivism at that time, which still very much applies today. But like the church, you know, is in this very like white suburb, and they go and kind of volunteer at this black church in Chicago. And then they also take like a missions trip to a Navajo reservation. So a lot of this is like stuff that I'm very familiar with. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think the first 500 pages really kept my attention, and then it's hard to like wrap up each of those 5 threads at the end. It was a little long, but I read it surprisingly quickly. So if you like, you know, kind of a long family novel that has a lot of these like social issues mixed into the plot, check this one out. I'm very curious to see the types of questions that A. Marie asked of the author, because that'll be really interesting to hear from like a craft standpoint, you know, as they're both authors. The next one that I read is another quick read. This is Read This to Get Smarter by Blair Imani. Read This to Get Smarter about race, class, gender, disability, and more. So when I posted about this one on Instagram, I was saying that this is a really good one to have on hand when something in your curriculum or lessons or like a student question, if you're a teacher, leads you into a situation where you're like, oh, let's like look this up and make sure to define our terms and make sure we do actually understand what we're talking about with this issue. Maybe it's something to do with disability. Maybe it's something to do with like class and economics or something like that. This one is really good to have on hand in that case. If you've seen Blair's Instagram little series, she has a series called Smarter in Seconds, and she just explains like terms that maybe like feel new to people. They probably intimidate some people. There are probably other people that are like, just like wanting to use those terms just to seem like they are in the know. And some people are maybe just curious about those terms. And so she just breaks them down in a really concise way, just so that if we are using a term like bisexual, disabled, communism, capitalism, something like that, there's actually some basic knowledge of the definition of that actual word before we like continue with the conversation. So her short videos, are just meant as a starting point for conversations so that you and somebody else are like working from the same definition as you continue to talk about that thing. And that's what this is as well. So that's why it's pretty short. It just goes into brief detail about each topic that, kind of live under these different umbrellas. And then once you have that common starting point of like, oh, this is what this actually is, then you can have better conversations. So I think that is super important in a classroom or in your household as you're talking to kids or adults. The 8th book that I read is by Agatha Christie. I am a bit fascinated by how prolific she was, how much she wrote in the 1930s and got published, and her books were actually selling. She sold billions and they were translated into all of these different languages. And I was just like, that's pretty significant. Again, almost 100 years ago, she was doing this. So the Nella Larson one was 1929. This book was published in 1938 originally. This is Appointment with Death. So it's like, okay, I just got to know, kind of like almost from a historical standpoint, like, all right, what was she doing at that time that people were so into? This is almost like a primary source, So I read this book. I didn't think it was very good at all. I thought it was not interesting and not well done. So, she writes mysteries. This is a mystery. The only interesting thing about it to me is that it's set in Palestine in 1938, so Palestine is still Palestine. And that part of like the setting was really interesting to me. But I think this is the case for like most of her books. It's just like a lot of rich people who have like gone on vacation to this exotic place. And I think she married like a archaeologist, and so she accompanied him on a lot of his trips. And so she sets her books in a lot of these places, but it's these like very privileged, rich white people who are in these unfamiliar settings. And for some reason, they always end up traveling like as a group. They're all in the same hotel for like, Americans or white people or whatever, French people, British people. And they just talk a lot. They talk about the other residents. And in this one, they're talking about this lady who is old and fat and mean. And it's so like grating. Like I guess she's not a good person. She's mean to her children who are adults and stepchildren and their wives and husbands and stuff. But they just, all these people just hate her and talk about how fat and mean and old she is and how it would be better if she weren't alive. And then there's no like surprise at the end, like she does die and no one is very upset about it. But then the detective, this Hercule Poirot or whatever, he just continues talking. It's only talking, it's all dialogue. And he goes through all of these scenarios that didn't happen. So you just read a bunch of scenarios that didn't happen. And then you read one that did. And that is the end. It's not a good plot. It's not good. I don't really get it. So I posted about that. And then everyone told me that And Then There Were None is usually seen as like her best work. So I ordered that one. And then at the bottom it said like previously published as 10 Little Indians. And I was like, not a fan of that title. So I just Googled it. I just looked it up briefly. And it turns out that that was actually the second title. And it was originally titled 10 Little N-Words. And that was based on a very racist nursery rhyme. And that's like the premise of the whole plot. So I'm just like, you know what? Okay. I don't need Agatha Christie in my life. I didn't like this one. I'm not gonna read the other one. I think I'm certainly fine without her. I feel like I gave her a fair chance and I will just be living an Agatha-free life and I am fine with that. There are millions of other authors, plenty of other people write really good mysteries. There's a lot of other stuff from that time, from like the 1920s and 30s that I would much rather read. She will not be a part of my reading journey. So, okay. I'm glad we don't have to end on that note. I did read one more before February. I was gonna say before February ended, and then I was gonna say, oh no, I mean January. I mean November. That is the month that just passed. I saw this one on Instagram. A lot of the like female pastors that I follow, and specifically female pastors of color. There's kind of like a little crew of women who are out on Instagram. And I saw a lot of them at this conference at Fuller Seminary, and they're, you know, all kind of like Instagram friends and often post about the same type of books and stuff. So this one is called The Defiant Middle. At first I was like middle school, but no. How Women Can Claim Life's In-Betweens to Remake the World by Kaya Oakes, who is a journalist and author of several books, and she teaches writing at UC Berkeley. So I was sort of hoping that there'd be like more history in this. She writes from a Catholic perspective, so she definitely knows a lot about, you know, like these female medieval saints. Sometimes like, you know, trans medieval saints, really, when we're actually looking at the things that they did and the way that they lived their lives. And I was kind of hoping that that was going to be like the strong foundation of the book, and it was all going to be like tied to that thesis. But it's really not a history book. It's a little bit of history, a little bit of personal narrative, a little bit of literary analysis, a little bit of, you know, theology and religion, just kind of all mixed together. So that does make it much easier to read and probably much more accessible to most people. So it's very interesting. It's definitely a feminist book, and it's very intersectional, very like pro-trans women, and it centers like older women, like women past the childbearing age, really. So it's kind of trying to look at like all these different spaces that aren't typically like the way that Mary is portrayed or whatever, right? Like there's so many other ways to be a woman, and how can you thrive in all of those different spaces. So this was another one that I read very quickly, like in a day. So a lot of these are quick reads. That's all 9 of them. Sort of a weird month of reading, and now we're into December, and there's always so much pressure in December. I have to figure out what I want to read for the rest of the year. What else is going to end up in 2021? How many am I on? Okay, 77. I just write my books down in this little like reading journal, and it has all the books that I've read for the past couple of years. So that's kind of nice to have them all in here, and we'll start 2022 pretty soon here. So we've got one more month where I'll do like a wrap up, and then I am going to do like some videos of the best books that I read in 2021 and I don't know, a little summary of what I read in 2021, something like that. If you have any cool ideas for like end of the year wrap up videos, let me know. And now let's talk about the giveaway. So again, we have my second book, Major Events in American History. I really like the way that they did the pages from the side. It's like a little rainbow. It looks really cool. And these correspond to like the different sections of history. So this does cover like 1,000 years. It starts with the city of Cahokia and it extends all the way up to the Black Lives Matter movement. And it has a lot in between. So this is really good for your history classes or like elementary school, just social studies classes in general, just as a reference, or if you're an English teacher, you know, to look at the setting of a book if it's set in the United States and see what was going on at that time. So anyway, if you would like to win a signed copy of this book and some stickers, this is what I'm gonna have you do. I'm going to have you enter here on this video. So you're going to leave a comment below and tell me who you would like to read this book with. Maybe it is your class if you're a teacher, maybe it's your kids if you're a parent, maybe it's your cat if you just want to do a little brushing up on your own US history, maybe it's with your cup of coffee, whoever it is that you want to read this with. And then also what makes this way easier for me is if you also leave your Instagram username so that I can contact you over there. Instagram is way easier to contact people. It's actually really hard to like message people via YouTube, but I wanted to do this giveaway over here rather than on Instagram because I feel like you guys who actually come watch my YouTube channel, you're like really my people, right? Like it takes a lot more effort to watch a YouTube video than to like an Instagram post. And we like connect over here over books and history and all these just kind of like different things over here. So I wanted this giveaway to be more for you. I'm not going to put the information over on Instagram because that's like too easy, right? So this is for you. So again, just leave a comment below and hopefully you have Instagram so that I can contact you over there. We will end this giveaway in 1 week. So I will put the date down below in the description box that this giveaway will close and like when I will announce who the winners are. And I will put that on Instagram as well because it's just easier to do. You'll see it immediately rather than me like uploading in a week or whatever. So good luck in the giveaway. Good luck with the rest of 2021. This year has been a struggle for the most part. I would say that's kind of like what has defined it more than anything else. It's been a good year, but it was not without its struggles. Like to get to the good was always a bit of work. So anyways, thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you soon. Bye.